Hey, how are you guys doing on YouTube? I'm gonna try to get my Facebook up real quick and then we will make this handy dandy happen. I want to say I hope everybody had a wonderful service on today. Ours was banging at Renaissance Church of Christ. Um, it was just awesome. I don't know how else to explain it. Something that's kind of been on my mind this past week. I've had to kind of do it, whether I was comfortable or not. It's what I've been called to do. And so I did it. It felt kind of good. And I don't know what this week is going to lead to. But hey, God is in control. So we're going to let him have it. He is so in control of it. My head is cut off on Facebook, on YouTube, on Facebook. Yeah. So we'll work it out some kind of way. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. So that didn't happen right on Facebook. So we'll get it restarted back up. But yeah, so what I've been trying to do is be a little bit more consistent with my postings. I'm posting on YouTube under my name, Margaret Iverson. I'm also on Facebook. And so we're just trying something out now. I'm also trying out starting my own consulting with churches and leadership and just motivating women because I also do Mary Kay. And one of the things that Mary Kay does, Mary Kay talks about the empowerment of women. I'm super excited about where God is taking me on this journey. So today I was just want to expound on my last week. And someone asked a question of me, and I wasn't quite sure how to answer the question, nor was I sure how to handle the situation. But so today led to lead. I'm thinking immediately I had the question, have you ever been led by a bad leader? And it may not have been that that person may have been bad. I think the better question is, or maybe have you had a leader who did not know how to lead? Because sometimes people can be placed in position of leadership and just have no clue whatsoever how to lead because they don't have the people skills. They don't have that empathy that's necessary to lead. That's one thing. Or they may just not know how. They've never been taught. They just say, here, I need you to do this. And they did it. And they thought they were doing well, but they didn't hone in on what their strengths and weaknesses were to make them a good leader. So I'm going to be very transparent here. I have not always led like I was called to lead. And that can sometimes put you in a weakened position with the people you're leading because they're like, she gonna let me get away with it. She's not gonna say nothing today. She's not gonna say anything the next time it happens. And so that then becomes their normal when in the back of your mind, you're saying, why are you late? Why are you showing up? Why are you leaving early? If your schedule says this, what's going on? Or why are you out of uniform? This has been consistent with you. And every time I have to talk to you every time. And so that weakens your ability to influence people when you yourself are not leading like you've been called to lead. And I said, no, I can't be reactive. I've got to learn how to be very proactive. And sometimes being proactive, you don't always know what's going to happen, but you can prepare yourself for such an event that you don't respond in a negative way. I had no real boundaries. I had them in my head, but I was not exercising, nor was I walking in the boundaries that a leader such as myself should have been walking in. So what did I start to do? How did I start to figure this thing out? I started listening to John C. Maxwell, to his podcast. I love reading Passing the Baton, which is my current director, Zach Hudson's podcast. And his podcast is called Passing the Baton. And he gives some key information on there that helps you as a leader to be able to deal with the day-to-day, mundane to some activities that happen as a leader, and also helps develop you as a leader. Listening to that podcast, he has one that deals with crisis management. That's John C. Maxwell. In one of his podcasts, he has one that deals with crisis, and it shows you what not to do as a leader. And some of the takeaways that I took from it is because right now we're in the time and looking at the news where people are wanting to shift the blame and you want to put it off on someone else. A good leader takes the blame. They own it. They don't shift the blame to anyone else. They say, you know what, that's mine. I messed up. Let me fix that. Own it. Own it, whatever is wrong. Don't just own it, learn from it. What did I do this time that I can learn from and prevent from happening the next time? So for me, learn from it, own it. If you've dropped the ball, hey, that was my bad. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't do the follow through. I didn't set the standard. I wasn't clear in my instructions. Whatever it is, own it, learn from it, and move on. Make it better the next time. And you may still have to go back and fine tune it. But if they know, look, she's willing to, she or you, if you're a he, own it. If they see that you're willing to own it, they can respect that. And then they know from now on, okay, they have to know how to respond or to react to that situation. One of the other things, the second thing that I'm doing is I am rereading for the third time the book Boundaries by Doctors Henry Cloud and John Townsend. Like I said, I'm reading it for the third time, but this time I'm reading it with purpose. I read it the first time because I was coming out of my marriage and getting ready, coming out of divorce. So I read it then because my self-esteem was shot. I read it again at the initiation of my dating Mike. And I'm reading it for the third time to help me. I'm working on healing me from a lot. Also reading it as part of my leadership, changing how my leadership style so that I'm not so reactive. I want to be proactive. I want to be in the moment. So I am again reading Boundaries to discover that I am accountable for my own productivity. We must confront fears. Hey, Francis, we must use our gifts and we must welcome God's gift of grace and its sustaining power. Because if we don't, it always get back up and try it again, do it again. And if you mess up, own it and know that this is the only way that we're going to get better is if we continue to start over. We have to, in that process, we have to accept God's grace and his mercy. And it's at those times that we can then apply the wisdom and the humility as a leader that we've been so diligently praying for. The third step in that is prayer. Pray for wisdom and humility because there's nothing better than, because to be able to own it, that's a humble spirit that says, I messed up. That piece of humility is so great. It's so freeing because pride has no place in that. And so once you're able to pray for humility, when you're able to pray for wisdom, God can then bless you with those things along with his grace and mercy that allows you to move forward in that. Once you start walking in those things covered by God's grace, people are going to see a change in you, and then they're going to want to be led by you. I've seen it happen in my life. I've seen me react to someone else that has a whole lot of humility and they're covered by grace, and I can't do anything but follow them at that time because those are key qualities for me. And if they're key qualities that I look for in my leaders, then guess what? I want to be a leader like that as well. What else am I doing? The fourth thing that I'm doing in terms of leadership to not be reactive, to stop being so passive, is I'm reading a book right now. Also, I'm reading a lot, y'all. I got two different books going on, but Well, really too many, three, if you include another book I'm reading. I picked this up in the store. It is James Maxwell's No Limits. And I really, really, really enjoyed this book. Just flipping through it when I was um, stocking it out at the store. But it's a book about knowing your capacity. And in that, he gives an equation on page 2 called awareness plus ability plus your choices equals your capacity. And are you awareness just says you're owning your stuff. Your ability are those gifts that God gives you. Once you have awareness and your gifts, what choices are you making? What decisions are you making about all this stuff? And that will equal your capacity. I love my aunt Margaret gave me the example that some people have a glass that's all they see is a glass being full. And for them, they may be a 16-ounce glass and they're full, but they want more. And they're constantly, even if they get depleted, they're constantly pouring it in. So they're constantly full. Well, for me, my glass may only be 8 ounces. And as much I may have already reached my limit, my capacity is done. You may can keep going at 8 ounces. I may not. And that's okay. That's okay. You just have to be aware of where your enough is. Is your glass half empty or is it half full? So knowing that, I love that analogy. Awareness plus ability plus your choices equals your capacity. And I think we have to know all those pieces of that so that we know how to respond, because that goes along with setting your boundaries. To be able to set solid boundaries, you kind of need to know those three components of what capacity are. Maxwell also does something that I like. He defines equipping. You know, we walk around saying God equips the call. He doesn't call the equipped. Well, we really need to understand that. We just don't need to use that as an empty euphemism. We really need to understand that. But I love how John Maxwell, in that same book, No Limits, on page 3, he says that as he's going through his speaking and mentoring people, that a lot of people spend a lot of time, successful people spend a lot of time equipping their people. Equipping helps people work on their strengths. And I'm reading directly from the book. Equipping helps people work on their strengths. People will more readily reach their potential when they work on their strengths rather than working on their weaknesses. So if you're going to equip someone to lead, if you are going to be a leader that leads, equip the people around you to become leaders, to become successful. I think the potential and growth grow when you work on your strengths. And when you work on your strengths, that's because you have a vision and you're putting all of your energy toward that vision. This is just something that was on my heart today. Like I said, I was faced with handling things a little differently on my job this week. And I said, how did this change you as a leader, Margaret? And what steps did you have to take to be a leader that someone else could be led by? What was your example like? Did you do a good job at that? Would your associates say, what would your associates say about your leadership? Like I said, by my own admission, I have not always been this way. I have not always led like I was called. I was very reactive. And so I pumped the brakes and said, no, I was called to this. So let me walk in this. Know that God is going to give me everything that I need to be successful. And if I mess up, His grace is there to sustain me. I need to learn from my mistake and be able to move forward and do greater and grander things. Like I said, I'm working on some things privately. I've come up with a name for a consulting on some things. And I just need you guys to know that I appreciate you. Pray for me, pray for my endeavors, and know that I want to be led first and foremost by Christ. And I want to be led by those who are humble in spirit and full of wisdom. I hope this wisdom is to help someone today. And if not, you can just scroll on past. If you liked it, you can share it with your friends somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to set some boundaries, and somebody needs to know there are no limits to your capacity. Love you guys. Have a good Sunday.